Welcome, witches, wizards, and muggles alike, to another enchanting episode of Magical Tales from the Slytherin Common Room, bringing your favorite Harry Potter fanfiction to audio format. So sit back, relax, and Accio headphones, and let the magic begin.
There is a trigger warning here, so I just want to get this out there. Please take care of yourself. The trigger warning says there is implications of rape and the aftermath of dealing with that. Please take care of your mental health. So just the next couple of chapters, be mindful of that. Apostasy by Deydralinne, Chapter 28, Pear and Honey. The second their feet touched the ground, Hermione was shoving Romilda away from her, and Avada Kedavra shooting from the tip of her wand effortlessly. Somewhere upstairs, there was a loud thump, followed by a scream that would haunt Hermione for the rest of her life. She had never heard Ginny scream like that, and it instantly turned her blood to ice. "Ginny," she breathed, taking off towards the stairs in front of her. "Ginny!" she screamed at the top of her lungs. She was so focused on getting to Ginny that she failed to notice Ron stepping in her way. "You're not taking her anywhere. She's my sister, and she's staying here where she belongs." His grubby hand reached out to grab her arm, but Draco was there in a flash, grabbing the man by his throat and throwing him against the wall. "Touch her, and I will cut your hands off before I kill you," Draco hissed. Ginny screamed again, and Hermione took off up the stairs and towards the sound, 2 at a time. She was certain that Blaise was somewhere behind her, based on the loud thumping footsteps, but everything else in the world had ceased to exist. Ginny had never really been scared of anything, not since her first year and her experience in the Chamber of Secrets. She had said that having Tom Riddle inside her head as a child had been scarier than anything else she had faced. But the screaming coming from her now was pure. There was no mistaking her fear and pain this time. "Ginny!" Hermione screamed again. She paid attention to the people that Daphne and Blaise were killing or flinging out of the way. "Hermione!" Ginny screeched so loud that her hair on the back of Hermione's neck stood. Her feet pounded against the hallway as she raced towards her friends' cries. The wooden door didn't stand a chance as it was blasted inwards. Hermione took exactly 1 step into the room before her heart broke. Ginny had pressed herself as far into the corner as she could. Tears streamed down her face, her red hair messed, and her pale skin on display. The only thing covering her bare body was a sheet she had yanked from the bed to shield herself, and the gold chain necklace that always hung around her neck. Ginny had killed before. She had tortured before. But the hatred in her eyes now was unlike anything Hermione had ever seen. Black and blue bruises in the form of fingerprints stained her upper arms and collarbone, and mascara streamed down her face, leaving behind muddy black tracks. Hermione was focused on the heart-wrenching side of her friend, that she didn't even notice Harry on the other side of the room until Blaise was roaring and lunging towards his naked frame. Bile rose in the back of Hermione's throat at the realization of what had happened, sunk in. "Daphne, I want him alive. Make sure Blaise doesn't kill him," was all she snarled before she rushed to Ginny's side. "Come on, I've got you." Hermione purposely stepped between Ginny and the chaos that was occurring on the other side of the room, shielding Ginny, who broke into a small yet gut-wrenching sob at the sight of Hermione's face. Hermione waved her wand over the sheet, transfiguring it into a shirt dress, and slowly held out her hand for the redhead to take if she wanted. Ginny's shoulder began shaking as she fought back sobs. "I got you, Gin. I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner. I'm so sorry." Hermione stepped forward cautiously and waited. Ginny collapsed forward and broke down against her chest. Hermione would have taken all the time in the world and killed anyone and everyone in this damn house who failed to intervene, but Ginny's broken whisper words reached her. "Please, just take me home." Hermione nodded and gently guided her from the room. She could hear Daphne threatening to stun Blaise if she had to, but she couldn't bring herself to focus on anything other than getting Ginny away from this place. Ginny gripped Hermione's arms with her nails, biting into the skin as she halted in the foyer where Draco was currently engaged in a fistfight with Ron. The witch snatched Hermione's wand from her and pointed it at the redhead male. "Draco," Hermione cried out, with only seconds to spare for Draco to jump out of harm's way before Ginny had set the house aflame. part of it catching on her brother's pant leg. "Blaze, Daphne, time to leave now," Draco shouted while taking off up the stairs. Hermione didn't stick around to find out what was happening with the Harry situation, not wanting to force Ginny to see his face again. Instead, she apparated them out of there and had the unfortunate responsibility of managing the multiple jumps. Hermione purposely stopped in the forest she knew along the way, pausing to look at her friend, who had begun to shut down. Her expression lacked all of the warmth that she associated with Ginny, and it made her want to burn the world to the ground. "Do you want a minute?" Her voice was purposely quiet. When Ginny shook her head, she continued on their way and silently thanked Pansy for having the foresight to shift their apparition point to the kitchen instead of the lawn outside. Ginny was already collapsing into a catatonic heap on the floor the instant their feet touched down on the marble floors. "Pansy!" Hermione screamed, but Pansy was already rounding the corner and into the room halfway through her name being called. Pansy took one look at Ginny, and her eyes widened and flew to Hermione's, heartbreak evident in them. "Tell me this isn't what I think it is." He didn't have the heart to confirm the claim, choosing instead to bend down and lift Ginny up under her arms. "Help me get her upstairs." "Oh my God," was Astoria's muffled gasp as she came rushing in, stopping behind Pansy before pushing both herself and Pansy forward to help. No one said a word as they got Ginny up on her feet. Hermione automatically made a turn towards the stairs, but Astoria halted her. "No, use my room. The shower is bigger, and it won't matter if she never steps foot in there again." Hermione nodded. The memories of this weren't even something that had crossed her mind. But of course that would be an issue. Of course Ginny would never want to step foot in whatever shower she had to wash this moment away in. As the three of them delicately helped her down the hallway, another thing became apparent. There was no way they would have gotten her up those stairs. Ginny's gaze was unfocused, and it was taking all three of them to keep her moving on level ground as it was. Astoria's shower truly was the best choice. It was huge, no doubt to make it easy to access her during the bad days, and it meant that Pansy, Astoria, and herself could help Ginny get into the shower. "Ginny, we're going to get you clean now, okay?" Astoria stepped up in front of her, her voice gentle as she guided Ginny under the spray with her hands. Not a single one of them cared that their clothes were being drenched. They all delicately worked together to wash Ginny's face with a soft cloth, all while Ginny stood there, trapped in her mind, frowning at the wall but not really seeing anything. Her eyes welling with tears and her chest heaving in shallow breaths. At one point, Pansy whispered that she was going to get other clothes for her. Ginny waved her hand, and the sheet dress that clung to her skin, soaked from the shower spray, burned away to ash, leaving Ginny bare. The act alone seemed to be enough to break her because she collapsed to her knees again and started crying in a mix of rage and heartache. Hermione and Astoria said nothing, dropping to their knees themselves and just stroking her hair away from her face, whispering affirmations to let it out. They had her, they were sorry, and they wouldn't let anyone else near her ever again if she didn't want them to. Pansy slipped back into the bathroom with the baggiest clothes she could find folded in her hands, which she left on the counter, along with Ginny's wand, which they had apparently found on the streets of Diagon Alley. Wordlessly, she opened Astoria's medicine cabinet and began rifling through the potions, plucking several out and putting them next to the clothes. "Ginny," Hermione whispered, only for the girl to fall sideways into her arms. Hermione's own tears, the first she had cried in years, were lost in the overhead stream of water. Her arms wrapped around her friend as sob after chest-aching sob fell from Ginny. Hermione didn't shush her, and she didn't tell her it would be okay because it wouldn't. She didn't know exactly what had gone on in that room, but she could guess enough to know that it was something that would stick with Ginny for the rest of her life in worse ways than Ginny's screams would stick with Hermione. She did promise the girl revenge. She promised her to help her burn the world to the ground if that's what she wanted. Promised to stay hidden away and never see the light of day if Ginny preferred. And most of all, she promised that she loved her. At another point, Pansy disappeared to answer a knock at the bedroom door, where Hermione distantly heard her arguing in hushed whispers with someone, until Astoria silenced the bathroom, blocking the sounds out. A few moments later, Pansy returned alone and joined them at the bottom of the shower, passing glances over Ginny's body, obviously taking note of Ginny's visible injuries. It could have been hours by the time Ginny stopped crying and sat up, wiping her face despite the shower water running over them all continuously, and took a few shaky breaths. "Soap, please," her voice croaked, hoarse from sobbing. Pansy summoned a clean cloth and pressed it into Ginny's hands gently, and covered Ginny's body and suds with a wave of her hand. The scent of pear and honey filled the air. It took Hermione a second to realize that the reason it smelled so unfamiliar was for the same reason they were in Astoria's shower instead of Ginny's. Pansy knew that this scent would be forever associated with this moment. She looked slowly between Pansy and Astoria with this sinking realization. They were too aware of what to do and what to avoid. At least one of them had first-hand experience with this tragedy. And the way Pansy had stiffened with the scent filling the shower led Hermione to believe that it was her. A deadened look her way and the smallest of nods confirmed her suspicions. It was hard to describe the way she knew her love for Pansy grew exponentially at this moment. She was giving Ginny a gift at her own expense, a scent that Ginny would never have to smell again here in this house because it was a scent that Pansy, and likely everyone else, would avoid at all costs. Ginny stared as the white bubbles washed down the drain, taking with it only the physical layer of grime from her body. The mental layer would be harder to get rid of, and one Hermione wasn't sure would ever truly go away. Astoria turned the water off and helped Ginny to her feet, taking Ginny with her to help her dry and dress. Hermione paused, wanting a second with Pansy alone, who hung around awkwardly, knowing what Hermione was doing. She pulled Pansy in for a tight hug the second Ginny had left the bathroom with Astoria. "Thank you, and I'm sorry." She pulled back and looked into Pansy's eyes, wanting to make sure that the witch understood the weight of her gratitude. She left it at that, not wanting to dredge up what might be an unwelcome topic for Pansy, and made her way into Astoria's bedroom. Ginny was standing there in front of a full-length mirror in the corner, her eyes tracking every bruise on her skin. Her hair had been dried, but she remained only in undergarments. "I can heal them if you..." Ginny shook her head. "No," she whispered, "no. I want to remember these, so that when I kill him, there's no doubt in my mind that he deserves it." There was another knock at the door, Astoria creeping across the room to answer it, and she peered back into the room and bit her lip. "Jen, Daphne is here. Is she okay to come in?" Ginny nodded absently, her eyes still glued on the reflection of her body. Daphne slipped into the room and fought to hide her visible response. Not that it mattered. Ginny was too lost in her own mind to notice the blonde's presence anyways. The way Daphne reacted, the way Astoria knew what to do just as well as what Pansy did, told Hermione everything she needed to know. The sisters had been the ones to help Pansy after whatever it was that she went through. How triggering was this event for all three of them, and yet none of them shied away. Hermione had trusted only Ginny to have her back for years, and she knew Ginny felt the same way, but they didn't only have each other anymore. Perhaps she wasn't quite ready to put them in the same category as Ginny. She wasn't sure that time would ever come. She and Ginny had been through too much together, but the others were pretty damn close. She cared about each of them, would protect them just as fiercely as she would Ginny, and she trusted them with the single most important person in the world to her. Daphne slipped over to Hermione and pulled her back into the bathroom, but froze at the scent lingering in the air. Her breath escaped her in one short exhale. "Oh, Pansy," she whispered, shaking her head to refocus and press the door closed softly behind them. Ron escaped. Draco said he must have fled seconds after you, because Draco didn't even make it up the stairs. But by the time he turned around, the bastard was gone and the house was burning down so fast we couldn't stick around. Harry is in the cell downstairs. Theo is currently reluctantly healing him. "What? Why?" Hermione exclaimed a little too loudly for either of their liking. A glance at the door reminded Hermione of the silencing charm Astoria had cast earlier, that she hoped was still in effect. "Because Blaise nearly killed him. And you wanted him alive, Daphne whispered back. I had to knock Blaze out with a vase. Love these rings, Granger, really do. But they are not helpful when I need to stop Blaze from killing someone, which, for the record, is not something I ever thought I would have to do. Hermione hissed in secondhand pain. Sorry, she grimaced. Where's Blaze now? Pacing the hallway. Draco had to set up wards on the cells to keep him out after Theo healed the gash on his head and revived him. He just wanted to see Ginny, but Pansy was pretty adamant that it wasn't the time yet. Daphne sighed, clearly not saying just how hard she had also been working to keep Ginny's husband from the room. Hermione nodded. If she wanted to kill him herself, she would get the chance to do so. Otherwise, he could go to Tom, who, without a doubt, would kill him, if just for the closure of it. Daphne opened the door again, and the two of them slipped back into Astoria's room. Ginny had finally gotten dressed and was sitting cross-legged in the middle of Astoria's bed, pulling at her fingernails. The rings didn't work because we were separated. Hermione's heart jumped to her throat. She knew that would be the case because she had been cut in diagonally, but the way that Ginny said it felt like she had failed her, like she should have been able to find a way to make them work over a distance. Hermione knew it wasn't what Ginny was thinking, but it was what she felt. So when Ron put me in a body binder and silenced me, I couldn't fight it. I had my wand taken in Diagon. She took several deep, slow breaths. I couldn't scream or fight back, and Harry just kept saying that I had to know what we were meant to be, that he was so glad I had come home. A sob turned growl ripped through her chest. He thanked me for giving him this, for giving him another chance, as if I wanted any of it. Ginny snarled. Her gaze focused on the bedspread in front of her, as if me crying wasn't enough of a sign, or my lack of movement, or my silence. Her voice trailed off in defeat, but then her eyes found Hermione's and everything else fell away. I was trapped. I couldn't do anything about it, but my mind was still all there. And then you apparated in, and the rings activated, and the force of it. He flew across the room into the wall, and I just started screaming, hoping you would hear me, praying that the room wasn't silenced because I already was. Thank you for coming to get me, Ginny croaked through sobs. Thank you for saving me. The weight of it all had her leaning forward and sobbing again into her hands. Tears and a gasp both fell from Hermione. Oh, Jen. She didn't know what else to say, because she would always come for her, always. But this time, she had been too late. If she had been even 10 minutes earlier, would it have saved her friend from this fate? Would it have made a difference? Hermione crawled onto the bed next to her and wrapped her arms around her. There was nothing else that she could do right now, but not let Ginny face this alone. The other girls all piled on the bed around her too, Astoria stroking Ginny's hair while Daphne and Pansy both just sat there in solidarity while Ginny cried.